The Crusaders had conquered many areas in Syria and Lebanon. Their next target was Jerusalem. They had 1,300 knights, and 12,000 foot soldiers were also part of the army. Jerusalem was ready too. Fatimid governor Iftikhar al-Dawla was waiting for the enemy with 5,000 troops. His army was smaller in number, yet the city's formidable defenses made up for the lack of troops. 5,000 soldiers were considered enough for the defense. Look at the city. It had a strong protective wall, 4 kilometers long, 50 feet high, and 10 feet wide. Archers were stationed all along the wall. The wall was surrounded by a moat. The Fatimids also had 14 catapults, and incendiary chemicals were stocked. There were water wells outside the city, but the Fatimids had poisoned them. There was a small pond outside the city, also within the range of Fatimid archers. This was problematic for the Crusaders to besiege the city. It was the month of June. Intense heat and thirst would soon break their will. In contrast, the city had enough water for its usage. Underground freshwater springs were available, so there was no water shortage. So, did the Crusaders besiege Jerusalem? Did they win such a difficult battle? On June 3, 1099, the Crusaders reached Ramallah, 50 km from Jerusalem. It was the last Muslim defense before Jerusalem and very important for the Crusaders to capture. They feared stiff resistance in this city, but the opposite happened. As the Crusaders arrived, they were surprised to find the gates open and the city empty. The inhabitants of Ramallah had fled. The Crusaders captured the city without resistance and seized a huge store of wheat. On June 6, they moved to Jerusalem. Another success awaited them only 16 km from the city. A delegation of local Christians from Bethlehem met them. Bethlehem is another holy place for Christians, as they believe Jesus was born there. A church had been built, the Church of the Nativity. The delegation requested the Crusaders to liberate their city from the Muslims. The Crusaders agreed and sent a force, which captured Bethlehem without resistance. No Muslim soldiers were in the city, its population was Christian, and they welcomed the Crusaders. The Crusaders arrived at the Church of the Nativity and celebrated their victory. After Bethlehem, the force returned to the main army, and the Crusaders resumed their march toward Jerusalem. By this time, all the area around Jerusalem was under Crusader control, leaving Jerusalem like an island in between. On June 7th, the city walls became visible. The Crusaders grew emotional. Many soldiers cried, as this city was the most sacred to them. For it, they had traveled thousands of kilometers from Europe. They were eager to capture the city, but Jerusalem was not an easy target. The Fatimids were ready. For the Crusaders, this city posed a formidable challenge. On June 7th, they besieged the city from its southern and northern sides. But, as Iftikhar al-Dawla had expected, they suffered from water shortages. Only a small pond had fresh water, but it presented many problems. It was attached to an underground spring that refilled every 3 days, and it was within range of Fatimid archers. Still, the Crusaders were desperate. They went to the pond after 3 days, and the archers targeted them. The pond became crowded with Crusaders. Some were killed, others raised shields and moved forward, and many fought each other for water. Several animals drowned, and soon the pond was full of carcasses. The Crusaders lost access to it. They searched elsewhere and found another water source 10 km away from their camp, but it was dirty and smelly. The Crusaders were in trouble. They had to bring that dirty water and drink it with barley bread. They drank carefully because it contained leeches, blood-sucking leeches. Many accidentally swallowed them and died painful deaths. The Fatimids soon discovered this water source too. They ambushed the Crusaders there, hiding in surrounding trees and bushes, killing them before escaping. On June 13th, the Crusaders attacked the fort from both the northern and southern sides. They tried to climb the walls with ladders. Legend has it that they were guided by an unseen entity who told them to continue the attack for a full day to secure victory. The Crusaders attacked vigorously, trying to scale the walls, but the Fatimid archers pushed them back. The Fatimids had another advantage. They fought with swords in both hands, while the Crusaders held a shield in one and a sword in the other. This doubled the Fatimid strike power, thus ended the fate of the first attack. Though prophecy promised victory, they failed. They returned to camp, shocked. Godfrey of Bouillon held a meeting with the other leaders. They agreed to wait and build siege weapons first, deciding not to attack until then. In the 11th century, many siege weapons existed beyond catapults. 2 others were famous, the battering ram and the siege tower. The battering ram was often a long tree trunk tipped with iron or another metal mounted on wheels. Soldiers would push it to strike and break fort gates or walls. The siege tower was a large wooden structure with multiple stories filled with soldiers. It was built as tall as the fort wall and moved on wheels. When it reached the wall, a part opened like a door, creating a bridge to cross into the fort. The Crusaders needed timber for these weapons. Local Christians guided them to forests, and the Crusaders brought large amounts of wood. Thousands worked tirelessly, building a large iron-tipped ram, 2 3-story siege towers, a few catapults, and ladders. They also filled the moat with stones to cross easily. Meanwhile, they received important news. 6 Genoese ships with food had docked at Jaffa, 66 km from Jerusalem. The Crusaders sent troops to bring supplies. On the way, they clashed with a Fatimid force but reached Jaffa safely. The Genoese sailors welcomed them and celebrated all night, thinking the sea posed no danger. But danger struck in the morning. A Fatimid fleet surrounded their ships and prepared to attack the city. The Crusaders and sailors fled. The Fatimids captured the ships and returned to Egypt. However, the Crusaders carried some food while fleeing and brought it back to Jerusalem for their soldiers. But another problem loomed. The Fatimid army was united under Iftikhar al-Dawla, while the Crusaders were divided. The first dispute was over Jerusalem itself. Who would rule once it was captured? Every prince wanted to be king, refusing others' claims. This issue dominated every meeting. Priests, however, insisted Jerusalem was God's city and must be governed by the Church, which represented God on earth. Military command was another problem. The northern and southern forces had separate commanders. Godfrey of Bouillon led the northern side, while Raymond commanded the southern. Godfrey's group was stronger, and even southern soldiers defected to him. Raymond, worried, paid his soldiers to stay loyal and even bribed them to help fill the moat. Both Crusader armies wanted the glory of capturing the city first. Godfrey focused on making siege towers and the ram, while Raymond concentrated on filling the moat with stones. The Fatimids, alert, deployed most of their forces on the southern side, where the wall was weaker. Their catapults rained stones on Raymond's men, making even filling the moat a challenge. The Crusaders suffered casualties at the hands of the archers. The northern side was also well protected. The Fatimids had fewer troops there, yet they were ready. They had a strategy to counter the ram and catapults. Sacks filled with hay and strong nets were hung along the walls. They were meant to cushion the walls against the ram and stones. They were also ready for the siege tower, bringing fire material to counter it. So, the two sides were well prepared. Many days passed in this way. The month of July had begun. Only a few fights had taken place during this time. However, psychological warfare was going on. The Crusaders killed Muslim prisoners in front of the city wall. On the southern side, a spy was captured and catapulted into the moat. The Fatimids responded in the same way. They hung several crosses along the southern wall, and Fatimid soldiers threw dirt upon them. Everything went on side by side: psychological warfare, preparations, and divisions among the Crusaders. The priests also continued their prayer ceremonies. On July 8th, they held a procession. Many Crusaders participated in it. They walked around the city barefoot with crosses, believing God would help them in the battle and that the city would be conquered. But they were too close to the wall, within the range of the Fatimids. The Fatimids showered arrows and stones, killing many of the Crusaders. The survivors ran away. All this was happening as the Crusaders were finally ready. The hour of the attack had arrived. It was the morning of July 14th. As the sun arose, the Crusaders stormed Jerusalem from both sides. From the north came the ram. 2 siege towers moved from either side. The attack had begun, but the Fatimids were ready too. They showered stones and arrows on the advancing army. The Crusaders suffered casualties but used shields to stop arrows and stones and kept advancing. Their target was a weak part of the wall. They wanted to break it down. The Fatimids noticed this and targeted the ram and the towers. They showered them with stones and arrows. It is said they dipped the stones in oil and fat, set them on fire, and catapulted them. The burning stones fell among the enemy. Some had spikes fixed to them, specially made for siege towers. They stuck to the towers, causing the whole structure to catch fire. The Fatimids burned the siege tower on the southern side. The ram also caught fire, but the damage was already done. The Crusaders had achieved success. A small breach had occurred in the defenses. The wall was broken. The Crusaders pushed the burning ram inside the wall through the breach, maximizing the damage. It broke more of the wall until the ram reached the main wall behind it, widening the small breach. In the evening, the battle was stopped. The next day, July 15th, the Crusaders attacked the same breach. Godfrey rode the siege tower. The tower was moved through the breach and brought closer to the main wall. It was only a few feet from the wall. The Fatimids deployed their best weapon to counter it. Greek fire, the most dangerous weapon. It was a chemical that ignited instantly, and even water couldn't extinguish it. The Fatimids fired this chemical at Godfrey's siege tower, believing it would burn like the previous one. However, the Fatimids did not know something. The enemy already knew about their secret weapon. Fatimid governor Iftikhar al-Dawla had made a tactical error. He had expelled most of the Christian population, and these people had helped the Crusaders find trees. They also warned them about Greek fire and told them how to counter it. There was a proper countermeasure. Only vinegar could extinguish this fire. The Crusaders used this tactic. They filled the tower with wineskins full of vinegar. As the defenders poured Greek fire on the siege tower, the Crusaders extinguished it with vinegar. The weapon was useless now. It was a major setback. The Fatimid soldiers panicked. They repeatedly tried to burn the siege tower, and part of the wall caught fire. Meanwhile, the siege tower touched the wall. The soldiers jumped onto it. Some climbed ladders and entered the city. The Fatimid soldiers fled. News soon spread throughout the city. The Fatimid soldiers on the southern wall also fled. Many jumped from the high wall and died. Now both the northern and southern walls were empty. The Crusaders entered the city from both sides. They began a bloodbath. Then came the massacre. Humanity is still ashamed of. The Crusaders brutally slaughtered people, Fatimid soldiers and civilians alike. Many had their hands and feet cut off. Many were tortured and thrown into fire. Children were taken from their mothers and smashed against walls. Women were cut down with swords. Some Muslims took refuge in Al-Aqsa Mosque, hiding under the dome of the rock. Some Crusaders took pity on them and gave them their flag, promising it would save them. But then these Crusaders left, and others came and killed them. The Christians themselves claim that 10,000 Muslims were killed in one place, in Jerusalem. They even killed Jews and Christians still living in the city. How many deaths were there? No Human Rights Commission existed to record the toll. Nobody knows the exact numbers. A Muslim historian claimed a huge figure, that 70,000 Muslims were killed in the Al-Aqsa Mosque alone, including imams and scholars. The Crusaders also plundered the city. It is said many Muslims hid their wealth by swallowing gold coins before dying so the enemy would not find them. But the Crusaders split open corpses, and some did contain coins. They held those coins in their bloody hands. They gathered in front of the Holy Sepulchre, the site of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, and chanted joyfully. One Crusader leader surpassed them all. He looted the Dome of the Rock, taking away all its gold and precious stones. The ownership of houses was also decided. The first to enter a house would own it. So the Crusaders rushed into homes, occupying every house in the city. Many poor Crusaders became rich overnight. While the looting and massacre went on, Fatimid governor Iftikhar al-Dawla hid in a tower with his guards. They stayed there for a few days. The Crusaders surrounded the tower but did not kill him. Iftikhar al-Dawla negotiated with them, assured peace, and promised not to resist the Crusader occupation. He was in no position to resist anyway. The terms were concluded. He formally surrendered the city and left safely, traveling to Egypt with his guards. Now the Crusaders' occupation was complete. Jerusalem was under their control. They installed a cross on the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But, even after Jerusalem's capture, the First Crusade did not end. One last battle remained. Ashkelon, a Palestinian fortress outside Egypt's borders on the Mediterranean coast, was still under Fatimid control. Therefore, the Crusaders set out to capture it. On August 12, 1099, the last battle between the Crusaders and Muslims took place. The Crusaders defeated the Fatimids and captured Ashkelon. The Fatimid army retreated toward Egypt. With the victory at Ashkelon, the First Crusade ended. When news of this victory reached Europe, people celebrated. But the man who had started the Crusades was not alive to hear of its success. Pope Urban II, who had preached the Crusades in Clermont, France, was dead. On July 15th, the Crusader army entered Jerusalem. 2 weeks later, on July 29th, he died. In those days, news did not travel quickly. On his deathbed, Pope Urban II never heard the news. The Crusaders had accomplished their mission. The cross was installed on Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Muslims had not considered the Crusaders a great threat, but now they were awakened. It was time to respond. The Muslims prepared for jihad against the Crusades, but the first person who came out to fight them was not Salahuddin Ayyubi. So, who was he? How did he fight against the powerful army of the Crusaders? We will show you all this in the next episode of the Crusades and Ayyubi.